he knew that he needed to give me a little carrot to get me out of the where I was by saying, you can't save me, but you can save your sister. And that was the pivotal moment, because he knew that I was also a little bit rebellious and fearless, and that could be also an issue that could be detrimental for my life and my safety in some ways. And I remember when I shifted from me to her, I was unstoppable. It's just like a mother's instinct. You have a daughter. And even though I never experienced that, beside feeling at the moment and for most of the time, as a truly mother instincts and doing anything that I can possibly do to protect my sister's life.
Expanding possibilities, the mindset zone.
I'm your host, Anna Melikian, and before we start with today's show, please remember to visit mindset.zone. Yes, instead of .com, it's .zone. There you can find all the episodes and other amazing resources, all at mindset.zone. On my keynote, The Happiness Fallacy, I speak about my husband's grandmother, Armen Melikian, who in 1915 survived the Armenian genocide. And she's one of my personal heroes because in spite of a so difficult starting and life circumstances, she created and she enjoyed a beautiful, beautiful life until she was 100 years old. And I really believe that we can learn so much from people who have endured unimaginable, and they really went from fear to greatness. And my special guest today is absolutely one of these inspiring human beings. And we have here Izabela, who was born in Sarajevo. She survived the Yugoslav War, where more than 100,000 people lost their lives and millions of people were displaced and became refugees. And Izabela was one of these refugees. She managed to escape to Sweden and then here to the US. We are lucky to have her now here in the US. And she, from her teenager years, with all these hard circumstances, she became a change maker. She's being dynamic in doing many things, including now as a leadership executive coaches, where she really leveraged her experience of living in 6 countries, speaking 6 different languages. And she has been traveling the world, over 50 different countries, working with a diversity of organizations. And she is recognized worldwide as a catalyst of sustainable solutions for global leaders, helping them in their most pressing challenges. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh my goodness, Anna. What an introduction. I'm deeply touched, and it's absolute pleasure.
Yeah, and Odyssey is all about your life history and how, for me, I was reading your book and how you transform the hardships in your life into growth and opportunity is truly remarkable, and I think inspire for so many people. And you also, in your book, you interview other people there that with different stories, because that is the thing. Many from the sports people that you interview in the book, and by the way, the name of the book is The World Messenger, From Fear to Greatness, Business, Sports, and Life. So, and I will put this on the show notes, of course, of the episode here. But let's start. Can you tell us one story that illustrates how you start this transformation from fear into a drive to survive and thrive?
Thank you so much for, again, a great introduction, and also mentioning your Armenian grandmother, but also for asking me that question, because so many issues are consistently happening, and even during the modern times. I'm going to kind of answer it backwards because I had a privilege after serving on many different boards and escaping the war zone, serving people from over 120 countries that experienced similar issues. And I was sitting on board specifically that I'm very proud of for genocide prevention. And we examined all the genocides that happened in 20th century, including Armenian genocide that was never recognized by Turkish government, and that was very difficult for people to reconcile and heal. Till genocide that I experienced in a war zone and ethnic cleansing occurred in former Yugoslavia, which I was able to actually share that not only because I was young, but because I had an incredible foundation growing up by my phenomenal father and my phenomenal grandmother, I had a chance and opportunity to really go deeper and understand what that foundation that they installed to me is, what I will do to face anything in life. And I remember was built on strong respect for myself, for family values. I remember my grandma said, no matter how challenging and difficult things get, promise you will never jeopardize how we raised you, but also that you will never hurt yourself or do anything to yourself. And I was wondering when I was a little girl, why she's saying that. And obviously facing not only real danger, but simultaneously really horrible fear when you are in protected midst of the war zone, when you are tried to push to spread propaganda news, when you're tried to be pivoted against your people or your neighbors or your loved ones, puts so much stress and pressure on young human. And I was a teenager at the time. And when I looked at all of that together, for me was no option. Can I, should I? Well, I just did it. And I said, only chance I can have is not only to survive is by being extremely resourceful and do everything possible imaginable. And was one very pivotal moment at the time, my dad was dying and he didn't want to be saved through channels or what was offered at the time that will jeopardize all these values. But he knew that he needed to give me a little carrot to get me out of where I was by saying, you can't save me, but you can save your sister. And that was the pivotal moment because he knew that I was also a little bit rebellious and fearless, and that could be also an issue that could be detrimental for my life and my safety in some ways. And I remember when I shifted from me to her, I was unstoppable. It's just like a mother's instinct. You have a daughter. And even though I never experienced that, beside feeling at the moment and for most of the time as a truly mother instincts and doing anything that I can possibly do to protect my sister's life. And that really was anchor on all levels, which was failure was not even an option. I even thinking about what if there was no option there, right? For me, it was just like thinking crystal clear, 100% being present, focused. What can I do in every moment to maximize opportunity of our survival? That she has everything she needs. Do we have enough of food? Does she have a water? Do we have enough of insulin? Whatever was the scenario, what is absolute necessary that I have to have on me if everything else is taken and stripped down? And when you start really positioning in these, again, amazing scenarios that nobody taught you, but you follow your instincts. That really is what drives you to step away from those fears, face those fears, survive. And then after escape happened from that first stage to figure out ways how to thrive.
And there is, you, in many ways, your family raised you or your initial conditions, you had a strong mindset. You had a go-getting attitude and that rebellion attitude that you speak about, and that seems that your dad knew very well his daughter, and how it facilitates you be able to tap into all that potential for your own survivor and your sister's survival because when you escape when was the Sarajevo size of the city, so was really we are speaking really extreme circumstances here, and you managed to go to Sweden to start living there. And then when you knew that your sister will be okay, that she will be because your brother was already there, so you knew that things they were okay. What was the drive that make you, okay, I want more, I want to really take your wings and fly? What was that drive after you met that minimal that took you to the next stage?
Sure. And just the kind of for correction on a couple of things.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem. I was in a siege, Sarajevo and outskirts of Sarajevo. I wasn't at the time in the middle of inside. I was able as a student to leave and escape. But we were still in the siege, horrible circumstances where there was no movement. And we were constantly receiving a lot of refugees, a lot of patrols, a lot of aftermath of attacks that we just didn't know what's going to happen. And escape was with one of the last convoys for sick and elderly. My sister was type 1 diabetic, and somehow I was allowed to be, without disclosure, her escort. And even though I was fearing for my life and I was worried if I'm going to be taken off, if I'm going to be prosecuted or whatever scenario might be, because we're so many variables that played out politically at the time. But escape that got me finally to Sweden was a crusade that, looking in retrospect, I just never could possibly imagine. If somebody told me what I'm going to experience, I would be like, no way I can do that. But just because there's so much going on, that it was this constant action, that really the best way to overcome any challenges and specifically fears is just to get in that action mode and get on the other side. When things settled enough, I realized however I love Sweden and that I was able to adjust myself extremely well in those environments, not only by learning language and serving people from former Yugoslavia linguistically, either legally or social service wise or whatever scenario they may need it, and definitely for purposes for my sister, for her, because she was quite shy, even though she was a year and a half older, and she would never advocate for herself. I made a pact with her. I said, we really need to figure out how to advocate, because I may not always be here to advocate for you. And it's kind of interesting how I intuitively knew that change is coming. Ironically, in Sweden, even though I was single and considered separate from my sister's case, because my sister had a diabetes and was depending on many different factors, believe it or not, she was better fit to stay and get permanent residency than me.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, I was pursuing with her to move to US. I was doing petitions in Canada, Australia, everywhere, English-speaking countries and countries that were accepting the refugees at that time. And I had the best chance to come to the United States, but not her, because of her pre-existing life conditions and health conditions. And was such a breaking point, and everything that I deeply down fear exactly happened. For her to go, what she needed to give up was the safety net of having access to healthcare and insulin and everything she experienced that she could not jeopardize, because she barely survived. She had a lot of initial complications due to the war and everything we experienced, and was too much to ask of her to sacrifice that, because I didn't know what variables we're going to experience in the United States and how we're going to overcome that. On the other hand, for me to stay was facing most likely deportation, even though they leverage and utilize my skill set, not only as an interpreter and translator, but also as an advocate and also someone who works so much with diverse children as an educator. And I realized that was too much risk to sit and wait for over 3.5 years of my status to be denied and deported.
So
and separated that brutal way. So I followed the trail and did everything I could do to get permanent residency and prove my refugee status and go that direction. And that was the moment where I sacrificed everything. When I mean, Anna, everything is like I did unspeakable again, because I have a chance to sit and wait and still get a negative outcome, or be proactive and then choose what's best for me, and consciously decide that what is best for me is not best for my sister, and vice versa. And that at that moment, even if we need to separate, will be either temporarily, or even if it's permanent, we'll figure it out. And that's exactly what I did. I found the path that I could come permanently here to the United States, and I got temporary visa from Sweden, which was unheard of when you're waiting on your status to get opportunity to leave the country so you can still come back if that fails. There was only safety net I had.
Yeah.
And then everything else I risked to go to Vienna, to be interviewed, to go through, again, grueling process of proving not only refugee status, going through all the medical exams and tests and everything, to be able then to arrive here in the United States as a refugee.
It's absolutely extraordinary. But let's fast forward to more recent times. Okay, you came to the United States, you really thrive here in so many different ways. How do all your this experience that you are just telling us a little bit about, and you go in more detail in your book, but how all this experience have prepared you for the work that you do today with organizations, teams, and leaders?
That is a phenomenal question, Anna. Definitely opportunity, obviously, to tap into resourcefulness and being conduit of change, because I've been exposed to so much change that I learned to embrace it and not resist it. I also learned how to transform personally on so many levels, from different countries to different languages, to different expectations and different ways of living, right? As well as conducting the business. And then that also gift came in such a different ways. It's like I work with so many people from these regions that these large corporations operate or conduct the business, or wanted to explore new growing markets. And all of a sudden, I was able to see the same coin, but just two different sides of it at any given time, and gave me a very strong acumen, not only of global business and management and the world, the essence of the world, but also gave me so much insights also from different ways, like corporate business in America and what corporations are aiming for, what they're looking. And then also struggle that a lot of executives have, even though they have so many countries and cultures and people working for them, how they still don't necessarily diversify or include in process or decision making, or don't have a necessarily shared understanding, not only what's going on internally in with their internal stakeholders in their organizations, but also what's going on outside in where they operate and with the global communities. So that gave me so much opportunity to pivot and leverage, but also to give them perspective way before this globalization. And now with everything that is going on, I feel like it's more crucial than ever before.
Absolutely, because that attitude of embracing change, embracing chaos, and knowing that you can come stronger in the other side, I think is something that organizations, and even, if we look to all stakeholders and the workforce in terms of, yes, it's not the same pressures that were in a war situation, of course not, but we are living unprecedented times with the COVID situation. People are, because I think sometimes when we speak, people like you, like my husband, grandmother, Armin, that I was speaking in the beginning, sometimes, yes, we admire and we get inspired, And we also can have a critical voice saying, okay, if we are not, if they manage to do all that, why I'm complaining about that my boss doesn't respect me? It's not life-threatening. But I think we have to understand that it's a big trap, this kind of direct comparisons. We can learn from how people face hardships and difficulties, and we can apply that learning in more modest situations. And sometimes it's so, okay, there are people here in the United States with the COVID, there are families kids that lost both parents, and more people, it's how they say, if that is not trauma, I don't know what trauma is. When you, in a couple of months, you can lose both parents, and if sometimes even the grandparents, and now what? And in the workforce was a lot of stuff. So how can people, wherever they are, whatever is their scenario, their situation, how can people, because as a coach, that is one of the things that will help them tap into their potential, transform fear into greatness. What can be the first steps?
I love the question. And you're right. Right now, we're experiencing highest amount of fear we've ever seen, right? Well, and so many variables. And even at the start of this year, with stock falling, with more lockdowns, with more challenges for people, because we reached the threshold of emotional capacity and a lot of people cannot handle it. But that is also a great opportunity, because it's like, what is that we're worried the most, right? What is really the most troublesome at the moment, right? By facing the fears head on, meaning whatever comes up emotionally that gives that horrible anxiety and stress, or paralyzing fear to feel helplessness, we have to have opportunity just to think about, like, what is this? And to pick it. And I'm like, am I worried about losing house or job or security, safety? How founded that is, it's like, and having conversation with loved one, specifically we have a partner or family members that we can have a very honest conversation around. And then what maybe actions we can take to prevent and making sure that were never actualized, so that fear can really evaporate, right? That's and then just go down the list, whatever that is, because fears will come and go. Sometimes will reappear when we least expect. Sometimes when we're triggered. We don't have to experience, as you mentioned, severe life-threatening situations like I did, and so many. But today, whatever it's life-threatening for you and relevant, either is the health issue, other is a safety issue, because everybody has something that they're dealing with, or at least should be, right? Sometimes people deny that. And more we deny, more all of that accumulates.
And one thing that you speak in your story, and I think is underlined here, is the importance of to some kind of action. Recognize the feeling and not running away from the fear. It's not saying, no, the fear is not there. No, it's recognizing there, I'm feeling this, and speaking about is an action. But look for the resources that sometimes we don't see, but be in a more action mode, correct?
Correct. When things are really happening, like, for example, let's say, like, I'm looking for a job, just by fearing what's the market like, even though it's great resignation, what are great cultures and environments out there, right? If I continue to stay in fear without even putting my toe in the water and preparing myself and knowing what's going on, I might completely just paralyze myself and say, no way I'm going to be able to find anything, right? But if I act on it, which a lot of people are struggling looking for a job, so that's why I'm sharing this, or contract, or whatever it might be, a scenario to be financially stable. Everybody is now feeling like, no matter how much you have saved, with everything changing, I need a more financial stability. So definitely understanding, am I positioned for best for that process? What is missing? Even though I'm procrastinating, fearing to do that, reaching out and asking for help, whatever it is, we know very well, we're super intuitive, super smart, and we know what holds us back. We know what we needed to do. And you're right, acknowledging, assessing, acting upon, and then really seeing what's working. And then doubling and quadrupling on that. When I saw that certain things were working or getting me further, that's exactly what I kept doing more till I get what I needed to do, right? And ultimately, it's like, oh, now I'm like feeling this is so good. I'm in good place. This is not an issue anymore. And a lot of times people then go and find another issue. So I highly recommend not go there. Don't create a more again, fear-based way of thinking. And that success actually, Anna, will propel everybody forward much more effectively.
Yeah, I'm thinking about public speaking and I'm thinking about sports, because one of the things of successful public speakers and high-level sport people, I think, is that they learn, they still have the body sensations that many people interpret as fear, but yes, they interpret many times in high-stake situations, they interpret that as excitement, as energy, as a force that they embrace to make them more alive and more in the high-performance zone when they need to. Do you agree with that?
That is so true. And specifically, if you're new to it, if you're not aware of it, if you don't know yourself very well, which is usually teenagers and younger adults. But for anybody that by then that played the sports, even not necessarily professionally, or competed, you should know where that energy and drive it's coming from. And it's very important, you spot on, not to confuse it. But that adrenaline, that desire of taking action and putting yourself out there and just seeing what's going to happen. And I always ask, when people ask me, how did you overcome? I was like, I always thought about what is the worst thing that's going to happen. And then when you play out 3 or 4 scenarios, it's like, oh my God, I got this. And even if that happens, I'm going to be okay. And because we're afraid to fail, we're afraid to be rejected, and we're afraid to also, interestingly enough, to succeed. And we dance between those top 3 fears so much. But the number one that it's been for quite a bit some time, it's the fear of being rejected. Yeah. So whatever happens, if we're not performing well or not delivering what we're supposed to do, we're afraid what's going to be from the other side, how other side will receive us. And ultimately, if we're rejected, that will make us feel bad and not feeling good enough. And that's, as a result, we're seeing a lot of fears and paralyzing moments in life when we don't go after things we should be going after.
Yeah, and leave opportunities on the table. So I think a first action that people can take is get your book, The World Messenger, From Fear to Greatness, Business, Sport, and Life Lessons. They can go Amazon, any place that your book is available, including in your website, correct?
Yes. You can, or you can just, because it's easier to type, you can just say type theworldmessenger.com and you will be able to get a special discounted and signed book copy.
Love it. And where do people can learn more about you? And for instance, if we have people here in organizations that want to know, because you are also a very accomplished public speaker, if they want you to come and speak to in any event and know more about you, where should they go?
Thank you so much for asking that. Obviously, my website is IzabelaLundberg.com, but sometimes that can be tricky for people to spell because unique spelling of my name. But simply, you can find me also on LinkedIn and message me. I really honor and respond to everyone that is reaching out to me and wanted to not only connect, but also have a question. So between LinkedIn, my personal website is IzabelaLundberg.com or theworldmessenger.com.
And I will put on the show notes, but Izabela is Izabela, just with one L and with the Z. And I will put this on the show notes. And you also have a very wonderful and powerful podcast. If people are listening in this podcast, they can look for yours. So what is the name of your podcast?
It's called The Legacy Leader Show because it's all about phenomenal leaders, including the interview with Anna. You will find so many golden nuggets and practical applications, how to lead better, how actually to overcome fears, and how to thrive, how to step away from that survival mode and be in the thriving mode.
Love that. And that is one of the reasons that I love to follow your work, because you truly, your story is an inspiration. The work that you do is always, and the people that you interview, we always can learn and get inspired to be there in the action mode, finding that greatness. So thank you so much for being here.
Anna, it was a pleasure, and thank you so much for having me, and I thank you for great questions.
Expanding possibilities. The Mindset Zone.
Thank you for listening, and remember to visit mindset.zone. Yes, instead of .com, it's .zone. There you can find all the episodes and other amazing resources, all at mindset.zone. As always, I'm so grateful you are here. Expand what's possible for you, for the ones around you, for the world.